you for inviting me to come and share our story. I'm Penny Fox, the General Manager here at Community Futures St. Paul's Smoky Lake region. So our Community Futures office jumped on board last year with Alberta Open Farm Days because we had heard through some other Community Futures offices that there was a good time to be had and it was a great opportunity for us to showcase our region. So I guess my first thing is Community Futures. There are 27 offices across rural Alberta, and we are all not-for-profit agencies that have a federal government contract to do small business development and community economic development. So if you have a Community Futures office in your region, connect with them because they may very well be doing farm days already, and we'll certainly help you with that. I think there are 6 or 7 Community Futures offices that are involved last year, and I'm anticipating that at least those will be involved again this year. So our story, as I said, we had looked at this in 2018 and just didn't have the manpower to do it. But in 2019, myself and Jean Wesley from Community Futures Lac La Biche decided that, hey, let's take a look at this thing. We hear that Jasper Hinton, the Spruce Grove, and some areas down south were having a great deal of fun with this. And we thought, we've got a lot to share in the Northeast, so how can we get together and do that? So those of you from across the province probably know that the Lakeland, or the Northeast region, is known for our lakes, for our fishing, for our outdoor activities. And so we thought, how do we, kind of add to that, that we are a great place that grow and produce food. And we have some great farm experiences here in the Northeast as well. So Jean and I got together and we started brainstorming and said, what can we do? We know that we are an awesome place to live, to visit, and to recreate, but how do we add that agricultural sector and our local businesses into that? And our first question was, how much can we do? And how much is too much? And I think we are called a regional host, but I think even as a host site, I think that's a good question to start. What can I do? And how much can I do? And how much is too much? And the how much is too much will come up a little later, because sometimes we want to do it all and we realize that we can't. So we, like we do with most of our community projects, we thought, okay, let's reach out into the community. Let's start with the people that we know and let's see what's happening. So we made some phone calls, sent some emails, talked to the business that we know around agriculture. And so we have a brewery, we have a carrot producer, Al's Carrots. Most people in the north know Al's Carrots. But we reached out to them and said, hey, have you guys been involved in local Alberta Open Farm Days? And if not, would you like to? Because we'll certainly pick up that kind of that administrative piece and that marketing piece for you. Lo and behold, and I had known this going in, that we did have one producer, K-Cow Ranch, who had been involved in 2018. And so they came to the table and we started having meetings, both audio, online for those that are not in St. Paul. And they became the experts and they started sharing their story about what they found out. And they had had an incredible experience. They had learned a lot in their first year and they said they were more than willing to share that with others. We then, of course, connected with Alberta Open Farm Days office. We connected with them many times throughout the planning. We started planning in February and realized that there were no silly questions because we asked them lots of silly questions and went from there. We started having monthly meetings. And so my Community Futures office is located in St. Paul, but we go from Heinsberg to Wasetna. So, we've got a couple of hours to reach across. So those meetings we opened up by audio so that everybody could take part. And Jean did the same thing. He's up in Lac La Biche, and so he reached out the same way, having monthly meetings with his committee. We needed help. So we're a small office. We're a team of 3. And we know that we couldn't do it all on our own. And so we applied for a summer student, and we're successful in that. And probably 3/4 of the summer students' time was involved in this project. But then we reached out, we thought, where's the first place to go? Of course, the Ag Societies were the obvious choice. I'm an Ag Society member, and I knew that they were also involved in this, and of course, agriculture being their business. So we connected with them, and the Ag Societies in Lac La Biche, St. Paul, and Smoky Lake jumped on board with us and said, yes, how can we help? What can we do? That then took us to Nathan, who you heard from earlier today. And then we started connecting with Nathan and got his expertise and the Alberta Association of Agricultural Societies office on board too, to share all of those experiences and knowledge with us. Connecting with the Ag Societies also gave us the advantage of it brought, with them, of course, comes volunteers, comes expertise, comes buildings, and comes other connections. So that certainly helped us when we were getting the word out, both to those that wanted to host on their farms, and also to those in the community, because they have all those connections already. The experience of others. So when through Brenda at the Open Farm Days office, there was a conference call with the other Community Futures regional hosts, and we learned a great deal through those conversations. What we realized was that there needed to be a clear message, and that clear message was keep it simple. We all had some great ideas. We all had lots of ideas. And what we learned was we should do half of what we planned, because otherwise it would be way too much and would be way too overwhelming. And after our first year in, I have to say that was very true. We had all kinds of complicated ideas and things that would have been wonderful to do. We kept it simple, and I think that also added then to the uniqueness of the event. Everyone, of course, shared their ideas, shared what worked and didn't work, and we kept those connections with some of those other regional hosts as we moved along. What we soon discovered early on was that Lac La Biche region and Smoky Lake, St. Paul region are very different. And we had different participants and different hosts, farms, that had different needs. And we thought, that's okay, we don't necessarily need to be doing the same thing. And what we found out was that the event was going to look very different in both locations. As I said, we wanted to keep it simple. We wanted to keep it fun. We needed to take anything that was complicated out of it. And and underlying all that is we wanted to make sure we were doing things that people could afford to do. And we knew once we got talking about bus tours and meals and all those things that we needed to find ways to keep them affordable for people to understand. And then what we realized, and that is true in every instance, is how do we market? And we spent probably 3/4 of our time just on the marketing piece as well. And I'll expand on that a little bit. We are small communities, and so just reaching out into the different organizations that are other not-for-profit organizations know what we were doing. We let our other Community Futures officers, there's a Community Futures office in Bonnyville, there's one in Lloyd and Two Hills. We let them know what we were doing. We reached out to them to connect with any of their organizations or any of their farmers that wanted to be involved. We opened those doors. But we did everything we could think of in marketing. We, of course, did our social media with all of us, connected with our municipalities, connected with all of our other groups. We did work closely, and we worked closely anyway with our newspapers. And so the newspapers ran our stories. We did media releases and newspapers into the stories, or stories into the newspapers, which they then provided those story space for free. And then we took out advertising, of course, to supplement them. But we've got front page news, we got full page news out of some of our story newspapers. They did a really good job of helping, because they too are trying to promote the region, and they, of course, through the years that they've been working, have connections also with our agricultural industry and with our growers and producers. And they wanted to tell those stories as well, because that's what makes us unique as rural Alberta. We reached out to local radio. We actually went and set up tables at the farmers markets for the month prior to our event, met more people put faces to names, and we also printed brochures, and we printed the posters that came from the Open Alberta Farm Days office. We took those posters and then we added a sheet on the bottom that had all of our host sites and all the activities that we were doing. And so they made a fairly big poster, and we spread them out all across the region. What ended up happening here in St. Paul was we did a bus tour. And so we hired a local bus company, and we started in Bonnyville because we realized that there was, even though Bonnyville's out of our Community Futures region, it is in the Lakeland region. There were a number of people that were excited about what we were doing. And so we took the bus and started it up there, and then came back to St. Paul to our Ag Society and picked up people. And we took 44 people around the region to 7 different sites. We started at 8:30, I think 8 o'clock in the morning, 8:30 in the morning, and we were back by 8 o'clock at night. It was a long day. In Smoky Lake, the Ag Society there works with the local farmers market. They have a farmers market on Saturday, and so they just expanded their farmers market and made it into a special market, and they did some displays on how to make pierogies and added some things into the farmers market to make it special and to make it different. And then in Lac La Biche, they're a huge multicultural society. So they had a number of host sites. They had 2 host sites that wanted people to come to the farm. And then they had some other host sites that, because of biosecurity reasons or other reasons, they weren't able to do that. So their Ag Society opened up, and they did like an agricultural showcase so that people could come kind of with the farmers market feel or trade show type feel. And they did a huge multicultural dinner in the evening. So each of the areas did something a little different, but we marketed within our areas all of the things that were happening in our neighboring areas as well. We handed out hundreds of the postcards that we had gotten from the Alberta Farm Days office, and we had dropped them off at stores and restaurants and any place around our community that would take them. And then we also sent actually personal invitations to every Ag Society member across the province, and ask the Ag Societies to put up our posters and to hand those invitations out. Probably more than 75 or 80% of our budget was on marketing. We spent thousands of dollars on marketing, but we had received a grant from Open Farm Days, and so we were able to do that on behalf of the whole region. And so that took some of that load off of our host sites as well. And what that looked like is that we took on the marketing this event out to the public. So like I say, newspaper, radio, here's what Open Farm Days is, please come and join us. And then the host sites marketed to the people that they knew, to their connections, to the people that was interested in what they were doing, to their customers, to their neighbors, and to the people they knew. So we kind of took 2 different approaches on that. But we did a lot of marketing, lots and lots of marketing. As I said, Lac La Biche took the route where they did the multicultural community event with their ag showcase. We hired the bus, and Erica was on before talking about food. So we worked with a chef and with caterers, and we did have a full course lunch here at Portage College because they have a culinary arts program. And we worked with a caterer, and they did a supper at our last stop, which was K-Cow Ranch. In Smoky Lake as well, like I say, they did some, they worked with their farmers market, and they did some food demonstrations and things like that around food. So there was food at just about every place that we did. Our local host that did the sampling and stuff, of course, worked with Erica and her colleagues here at the St. Paul Health Unit. The self-driving, what we did, and it took some time, but it was certainly well worth it, is the self-driving map that was on the provincial website, Open Farm Days. We did something similar, and we did a map and a flyer for the 15 sites that we had here in the Northeast. So our summer student, made it look very similar to what was on the provincial website. We did our own little map at the bottom, but we had the name and the physical location, the GPS location. We had visited all of those sites to make sure that we had the correct GPS location, and we had those locations on one piece of paper. So those people that decided that they didn't want to be with us all day on the bus or wanted to do the self-driving piece could grab this piece of paper, and they could take it, and they would find that map to find all of those areas. That was very popular. We printed at least 1,000, and I want to think there was close to 1,500 of those colored brochures, and we had them everywhere that we could think of. They were certainly at every host location that day. They were out in our community a month before the event, and we talked to many people that came in from Edmonton or other, like Lloydminster, other areas, and they had grabbed the map, and that's what took them around on their self-driving tour. Like I say, that did take a lot of work, and in the beginning we wondered, oh boy, because it took days for us to do that, but we did get it figured out, and it was well worth it in the end. And finally, you know, what did we learn? We had our mission going into this was that we wanted to promote the region, and I think we did. We spoke to many people that, actually there was a couple of groups. We had many people that had come in, like I say, from Edmonton and Lloydminster, from outside of the region, came into the Northeast region and got to try some foods, got to visit some places that they had never been or had maybe never heard of even before that day. While they were doing that, they got to see the beauty of the lakeland. And that will always encourage people to come back. What we also saw, and certainly on our tour, was that we saw a number of people that were raised on the farm but had left the farm. So they were either raised on the farm when they were a child, and when they grew up, you know, moved off the farm, may have still stayed in the lakeland or still stayed in a rural area, or may have moved into a city, depending on where their life took them. But they came back and they were starting to relive those memories of when they were a child and when they were working in the barn, or whether they were on the tractor, or, you know, those picking. We had God's Prairie Simple Farms, and we were picking cherries there, and we were checking out the gardens, and that really brought some of that heart piece to that group. And when I talked about not doing too much, because every host that we worked with wanted to make sure that when the people got there, they had lots of things to do. And what we realized is then, you know, give people one or two things to do. What people really enjoyed was sitting at the picnic table and just being in the energy and the relaxation of that rural environment. And I can recall one lady in particular, and 3 times during the day, I just saw her wandering around and just soaking up the air and soaking up the smell of the hay, and looking out over the rolling hills that there are here in the lakeland. And I said to her, I said, "You're really enjoying this?" And she said, "You have no idea how much it means just to be here and to just be part of this place." And she was so energized by that. And many people told me that day, that just to sit in someone else's yard and to watch the chickens and to hear the cattle, and they didn't need to be entertained. They appreciated the learning because there was lots of learning, but they didn't need to be on that whole time. They just wanted to walk around, and they just wanted to feel and touch and smell, as you've heard earlier today. The other part, the education part, was really appreciated as well, and Nathan had said that earlier. When we got to K-Cow Ranch, they did a great deal of educating around traceability. You know, show people the ear tags, show people how they follow that cow from the time it was born till the time it's slaughtered. My big learning was that you can get ear tags for cattle that have bling. They got little diamonds in them and had the name written on. I grew up in an agricultural community. I didn't know that was available, but they showed, you know, how the stanchions the cattle are in. They showed us the barns. At God's Prairie, again, I learned that chickens love yogurt. And we were at Al's Carrots, you know, how is it he has manufactured a lot of the equipment that he uses, and how did he think about it, and how did he solve those problems? And I think that was the real benefit in the evaluations we saw at the end, is people were expecting to see a farm, but they know that every farm is different and everyone does something a little bit different. And what was the unique part of that? So I think we certainly learned a lot. Our community learned a lot. And then because of our connections with media, the week after, our media was full of all of the things that people had experienced during that day. We saw smiles and hugs and like I say, a couple of tears of people remembering, oh, I remember when I was a little girl on the farm and those calves were born, and oh, look at all the different kinds of chickens, and we made some great connections with each other, and we made some awesome connections with our agricultural community, and again, a stronger connection with our ag societies, our chambers of commerce, and all those others that jumped into this project with us. And we realized that this was not something to do if you were watching what you ate, because most of us ate way too much. There's a picture here of this is what our supper meal looked like that was catered at KCAL. But we all had a whole lot of fun, and we all came home and we were all tired from the experience and waiting for another year to do it again. So I guess my main message is, I know that, to talk about the marketing piece. The marketing piece, we did as much marketing just talking to people and the social media as we did as marketing, because we spent a lot of money doing it. We probably this year won't need to spend as much, but there are all kinds of ways to market, and we found the formal ones and the informal ones. And like I say, some people saw the poster and some people saw the ad in the paper and some heard it on the radio, and we just were never sure, so we started to track that where that came from, but that does get expensive. But if you can work, we saw neighbor working with neighbor, to market and working together, and we were community working with community to market together, and our plan is that this will get bigger in the Lakeland as we move forward, so that our communities are working together, our community futures offices and our chambers are working together on this. And just to take that breath and realize we live in rural Alberta and we know how awesome it is, and sometimes we take it for granted, and that how we need to share that way of life with other people and how interested they are. I talked to specifically a young couple from Edmonton, and they had come out and they were really interested in what does it look like day to day to live on the farm? What does it look like to do chores? What are chores? And to pass along that way of life. So I think that's enough. I don't think I need to say anything more. Here's my contact. This little foxy is much cuter than I am. So if you think about Fox at Community Futures, you'll find me. I'm Penny Fox at Community Futures, which is SPSL. That's Community Futures St. Paul Smoky Lake.ca. And there's our phone number, but you can reach out to any Community Futures office across the province. They're all aware of Open Farm Days, and they can connect you with myself or any of the other offices that might be in your region that are looking at doing this as well.